Oh man, I don't know what's going on. Let's see, what do I have to cover? I want to talk about, I know what I'm talking about. A couple of quick little items to get us started. And then maybe some not so quick little items to get going. WebDriver IO, wait until and get URL with a pattern. So this is one thing that I want to try and add a little bit to these broadcasts, is covering Stack Overflow questions and kind of highlighting them just to go run through ones that I actually know the answer to, or sometimes somewhat know the answer to, and know how to submit an answer to it. Anyway, in this one, we've got the WebDriver IO wait until and get URL pattern. And what they want to do is they want to wait for a URL to contain certain text. So I'm guessing what's happening here is they've got a single page web app, and when they load the page, it redirects them to a different URL, and they just want to wait for that URL to load before moving on. So that's what they've got. And in the problem they're running up against is, just a second while I adjust some things on my side. Let's see, how do I hide that? That's how I hide it. Perfect. Okay. The problem with that issue is that they're doing browser.wait until, and then they're returning the get URL and then the index of the project. And they're checking to see if it's greater than -1. If it is greater than -1, that means that the project in the URL was found. Things would go. But what they get is that index of is not a function. But that doesn't make any sense, because if you were to console log out browser.get URL, it would actually return just fine. It would give you a string. It would give you the URL. So why is appending .index of not working in this instance? Well, what's going on is that this is actually a promise. And WebDriver IO kind of jumps into this promise using a framework called Fibers. I'm not too entirely sure about the details of it, but it uses a framework called Fibers, and that kind of injects itself into promises and will return them as if the promise was a synchronous call, not an asynchronous one. So normally with promises, you get like a promise back. So when I say browser.get URL, I'm not getting the URL back, I'm getting the promise back, and I can wait until that promise has been returned in order to take some action on it, to get the actual value on it. And with Fibers, I believe it's Fibers that does this, but I know WebDriver IO is what really does this, and it's the sync framework. What it does, it kind of injects itself in there, and so that way, if you do like var x is equal to browser.get URL or console.log, maybe console.log wouldn't work, but it kind of injects itself in there. Anyway, so what's happening is that this is actually a promise at this spot, because that WebDriver IO hasn't been able to inject itself into that promise. And so you're trying to get the index of on a promise, and that just doesn't work. So for my answer, and if you want to learn more about promises, you should not expect to learn it here, because I'm not that great about explaining it, so sorry. Anyway, for what I suggested are two different things. So if they are in synchronous mode, if they are using that, then they just need to assign it to a variable, and that will be enough to let WebDriver IO kind of hook in and return a string here instead of the promise. And you can use the index of project in this spot, and just return that instead of the browser URL. So basically you're not chaining it all together in that instance. The other thing is, if you're not in sync mode, and you can tell if you're in sync mode or not, if, let's see, oh, I thought I had it in here. There we go. In your WebDriver IO configuration file, sync is set to true. So that's how you can know if you're in sync mode or not. If you're using the test runner. If you're not using the test runner, if you're doing something like var wdio is equal to require, that's not using the test runner, that's using standalone mode. So you won't have this. Okay, so without it, then you do need to treat it like an actual promise and use the then promise nomenclature to get that working. So you go ahead and return So using it, then it gets the value that gets passed in or returned from get URL. And you then have that value to operate off of. So you're going to have two return statements. One is going to return this promise, and then inside the promise, we're going to return the true false value that we're looking at, that we're looking for. So that's what's going on there, and yeah, that's what's going on. So that was basically the answer, is either one of these, and unfortunately, I don't know which one they were using, but whichever one it was, it's working nicely. So that's cool. So that's that. If you do have questions, Stack Overflow isn't a terrible place to ask them. There's probably 2 or 3 questions asked a week on WebDriver.io. Some of these are really confusing that I just have no hope for, like this one, selector execute. I think what they're doing is, like, that's kind of foreign to me. They're like trying to use new UI selector, child selector, new UI selector, like this kind of Java syntax for their selector. And I don't know if they should be doing that. I'm wondering if that's what's causing the issue. And I think there are also sometimes when people get confused between WebDriver.io and other things out there. But yeah, I try and answer these whenever I can. And this is kind of a segue into another point, or another thing I wanted to talk about, is a new video I just set out for my course. I finished it up. It's how you can store Cloud Selenium credentials in WebDriver.io. So when you have a cloud service like Sauce Labs or BrowserStack or Testing Bot, you need to have credentials in order to log into it from your WebDriver.io instance. And if I open up the WebDriver.io page, they will mention that. So big. And under services, we've got like Sauce here. And here are these credentials, user and key. And you could just put these straight into the configuration file, but that's not very secure. And that's kind of what they're saying right now, is that they've got these credentials that they need for logging in, but they don't want to store them in the configuration file or in the spec file. So what do? And the same idea applies, is you want to do, one of 3 things. You can pass in the credentials via the command line. So if I open up my command line, this is what that would look like. Nope, not there. Profiles. There we go. Okay. If I open my command line, I can do something like npm test. And then to pass in credentials, I would use -- because this is npm. I'm running this through npm. If I were to just run this straight through wdio, I could pass in the credentials here. So I would just add something like user is equal to my username, something like that. And then pass is equal to 102 for my password. And that would get passed into your configuration file, I believe. Kind of like what we did here, but it's a bit different. That's using environmental variables, which we'll talk about in just a second. But anyway, you can pass it in that way, and that will work. It's not ideal in my mind, because you have to remember it every single time how you're going to get things going, or like what you need to type in. And you have to remember your password every time. And then sometimes, you have this showing on your screen and it's not perfect. Not ideal from a security standpoint. So another option then is to store the credentials in a secret.js file. And so to do that, you would say module.exports is equal to, and then you would have your user here, and then your password here. And this would be saved as secrets.js. You see I already have a secrets.js file here. This can be any name, credentials, or whatever you want to name it. And then inside your configuration file, you'll load it. So you see how here I load it, secrets.js. I could do the same thing with credentials and require./credentials. And this is going to be an object that's going to look exactly like that. So there. That's what that's going to return. And so you can do something like credentials.user, which if we had somewhere in here, no, we don't have it. In here we would have our blinking, our user, credentials.user, and key would be credentials.pass, something like that. So you load it in through there. In your test file itself, you could do pretty much the exact same thing and just pass it into your command that you need to get going. So that's how you do that. And yeah, that's that. Okay. The last way is through environmental variables, which you can do something like, if I do echo, let's see if I have any process.b.user, let's see. Nope. Sorry, I'm doing this wrong. Not there. How about that? No. There. Okay. So I do have an environmental variable set up, my sauce username, okay, lamping. And the way I did that was with this export command. And then I do the variable I want to name, so sauce username, and then I hit equal, and then I set that to k-lamping. And then for this session, it's set. And then inside of here, I can use this process.env to get that. So that would be sauce username. And then for the key, it would be sauce key. And that's what you see in the docs. So you're typing my name, I typed it there. So that's what you see over here in these documentation, sauce access key, sauce username. And so you can set that through your terminal. This is the Unix, Linux style. In Windows, you'll do set X. And then the other thing is that you need to update your profile in order, not your profile, your bash profile. So yeah, you see here, I'm exporting my Selenium user to be my username. So if I echoed this out, it should work. Maybe I set that up wrong. So maybe, oh, that's right. I did because with my terminal right now, it doesn't source my profile file. There's a few different profiles. There's bash profile. There's bash RC. Maybe, no, yeah, it's just bash RC. And then there's profile. And mine isn't set up to read, to go through profile right now because I've got a kind of a custom setup. So that's what's going on there. But I also have bash RC and bash profile. You can also put this in. And what that's going to do is allow you to run that export command wherever, I thought I had it in here. Yeah, it allows you to run that export command every single time you load and load up a terminal. That way it doesn't go away. Anyway, if you want more details on all of that, that's in this video here, storing cloud Selenium credentials in WebDriver IO, which is available. This is the first video of module 7 of the course. So I just felt like it's one of those things that I think people run across a lot, which is kind of evidenced in here by this. And yeah, I figured it was worth going into and sharing with everybody. So feel free to share that if you'd like. It's out there. Okay, give me just a second. Take a deep breath. I did that. Let's take a look at chai-webdriver IO. That sounds really good. What is chai-webdriver IO? What is it? So it is, and just so you know, this is the current drink today, is real ale. It's a white Belgian-inspired wheat beer, and their can design is pretty interesting. Just pure white with some silver to it. Really nice. I really like Real Ale Brewing. They're up in Blanco, Texas, which is a pretty small town north of San Antonio. but they make some really good beers, and I really like them. So, hey, my webcam isn't falling this time. That's good. Did that last time. So, chai-webdriver IO. So when you're doing WebDriver IO assertions, you usually do sort of things like, well, if I open the website, you will see there are commands like is selected. And so you'll want to do like browser.isSo, sorry, you'll do expect browser.isSelected and then to be true, which isn't all that great because if there's an error in it, it comes back looking kind of ugly. So instead, we can add this chai-webdriver IO package, and it'll allow us to do things like take a selector, pass in the selector only, so we don't have to pass in the browser.element. We just pass in the selector, and it'll pass that to browser.element, I assume. And then you can run assertions on it. So there's things like to be visible, to have text. Oh, that's really cool to have text. Because, yeah, I guess normally you would do something like get text to get the text of the element. So that's what is going on there, get text. And that's kind of that. You can pass to have count, that's saying how many selectors, not to have text, things like that. So neat little thing. And hopefully I can add some things to this because I think it's missing some. Let's see, all assertions that start with a WebDriver IO compatible selector. Oh, they all start. Then we can add our assertion. Let's see how many assertions they have. Count, text there, and visible. So you'll probably see is visible, client.isVisible. So yeah, they use is visible in the back. So there's actually a fair number more that we can add to this. We could do something like you saw when I said get text. You could say it could check that it has a cookie or that it has an attribute or a CSS property or is a specific tag name or the URL is something. So we could do an assertion like that. But for now, I want to just take a look at getting this installed for us. So to do that, we need to install chai-webdriver IO. Let's see if they have, yeah, they've got setups here. And let's see where we want to try this. WebDriver.default. So they load chai, WebDriver, and then they use it here. Oh, and they pass in the browser to it too. That's kind of interesting. I'm going to want to do this inside of my configuration file. So down here, you see I'm adding chai expect in there. And I'm going to want to do something like that. But I don't think I want to do it on this file. So I'm going to close out this. Don't worry about saving that. Close that. And then that's all that. So let's open this up and... oh, what did we look at last time? I remember having the same issue where it didn't work. So let's see. Oh man, I don't know what's going on. Let's just bail out. Make directory WebDriver IO stable. That's what I'm going to call it because I want to recognize that this is stable. I'm going to install WebDriver IO. So first thing I need to do is initialize a new package.json file, and then I'm going to install and save WebDriver IO and let that run. And I think I'm just going to copy this test over and see if I can get it running over there. I just hadn't used this dollar repo in a couple months, so I'm guessing something went berserk on it. So sorry about that. Hey, welcome if you just joined, and I'm running into some technical difficulties with this, so entertain me in the chat while we do some installations. But basically what I'm trying to do is get chai-webdriver IO working with these old tests to kind of improve how I read through them, and yeah, go from there. So what was I doing? Yeah, these tests aren't working for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to edit my package.json file, and I'm going to change this to WebDriver IO, and then I'm going to run npm test to run my initial setup of WebDriver IO. test on my local machine, I will use Mocha, and yeah, go ahead and use that, and we'll leave them there. Use the dot reporter this time, and then I want to use Selenium standalone because it's really cool, and that's all I'll use for now. I will use command because that's kind of handy, and then I'm going to test the WebDriver.io website, so I'll copy that over, paste it. Oop, and I have a slash there. I always add a slash there, and I shouldn't because it's just not needed. So yeah, that's what's going on there. So I need to go into my configuration file, come down here. I'm going to change this over to Chrome because my version of Firefox is weird, and then I'm going to go to that URL that I entered and remove that. Okay, then I'm going to copy all of this over. I'm going to make a test directory, and then I'm going to make a specs directory. Oops, test/spec, because no, we need specs. And then I'm going to open up a file inside of the specs directory called chai.js. Sure, paste that in. You see I'm requiring chai here, and I'm also getting expect. But in the instructions of the chai WebDriver, they mentioned that you just require chai and then get the default from there. I need to install chai-webdriver.io if I'm going to use it. So let's do that real quick. Save, and then let that install in just a moment. And just copy and paste this over. So that's interesting that chai-webdriver.io, it doesn't have you. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was going to say it doesn't have you assign the expect variable, but you can. You do have to reference chai.expect. So we're kind of doing that same thing here, just shortening it up. So if I can type, that's chai.expect, and this should work now. If it wasn't my test, oh, I should install chai. That would be good. Good to know. And again, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube. If anybody needs to drop out, you can catch up later and go through faster speed because I can be a little slow in this. But I do try and talk as fast as I can so that nobody can understand me and I can run out of breath and have to go. Anyway, let's test this. Man, I really wanted to do a test of an HTML5 game. If you have a good HTML5 game that you think could be tested with WebDriver.io, send it my way, either here or in Gitter or whatever, or in YouTube comments, where in a future episode I can do the test of the... Okay, so it's loaded our page. This is different from before. It didn't used to load our page, so that's better. But I do have a fail, but I don't know why. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. But anyway, yeah, if you know a good HTML5 game that I can use, preferably nothing in Canvas, so that's going to limit it greatly. And then preferably something that's more text-driven so that I can read the text and read the values and everything, not so visual. A lot of games out there require you to visually identify things, and that's going to be kind of difficult to do. Not impossible, but difficult to do. But if you know of a good text game, kind of like we went through... several weeks back, the Spyfall game, that was a cool little thing, and yeah, that would be kind of neat. So this is just taking forever to load. What is going on? This is why they tell you not to do live demos for presentations, because things just get messed up. Why are you taking forever? Breaking the website. So my timeout died. Jeez. This is me just staying calm and not freaking out because things just don't want to work. Screw it. I don't have search on here, so let's just say we're going to get the. So I'm testing my local one now. Let's validate that this thing has text. That's good. So I'm gonna have a class of menu text. So my menu text, and I'm gonna search for that, and then I'm going to expect menu text. Have text. This. Oh my gosh, please work. That's all I'm gonna do. That's it. So this is different because normally you would have to do expect menu dot get text to equal. So I'm gonna run both of these just to kind of show you what's going on. And let's run the test. Let's see if the page actually loads. It loaded right away. That's good. Why is it not doing anything? God damn it. Why doesn't it want to work? Things are fine. There's the page. Okay, so it passed here. Does this not work in sync mode? Because that could be a thing. No, it works in sync mode because look at that. WebDriverio 462. 3.5, that's what we have. Golly, their test doesn't even run in WebDriverio. What's going on? Is this another issue? Immediately flag. What is going on? I don't know. Change match the properties were appropriate. I guess let's just use their example. So looking for elements, looking for elements, looking for elements, looking for elements. What's it doing? It didn't do anything. So I was looking for this site container heading. Let's see if that even exists on the page. Nope, not that. Site container, H1 heading. I wouldn't think that this is an old selector. What do you mean it's not a function? It'd be like that. Okay, so it can't find it. How about just site container? Site container isn't there. Site container's not a thing. I think they probably got rid of that ID. So it used to have an ID in there and now it's gone. I think. Maybe it's because I'm logged in as well. So I'm just going to get this class. Whoops. Dot. I wonder if, well, no, that's not it. Oh, it's getting late. I gotta go pick up the kids. Okay, it worked there. Dumb. Okay, browser.url. I can get rid of that. Chai.expect to not contain text. To have text. Oh, I'm dumb. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise to me. It's to contain text, not to have text. I should read the documentation. That's why they have it. No, it is to have text. But in here, it's to not contain text. Oh, I'm confused. Oh, is there a difference between have and contain? You know what probably happened is that they wrote the documentation and they changed it and forgot to update the documentation, because that's what I do all the time. Add method text. Okay, so if we go to chai assertions, because we need to see that how that is all set up. What did I have it as? To have text, yeah. That's what I would expect it to have text. To have, so have should be a thing here. Yeah, to have property. And so you can say to have text. What did I do wrong? Oh, I need to do chai.expect, because I'm not referencing chai. You know, did menu text not return anything? No, because this one passed. I don't know. I just hope this is passed, because I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. It doesn't look like it's passing. So it's got the element. It's got the text. And it failed. What if I do this on a higher log level? Log level equals verbose. See where it's failing. Okay, so it gets the text returns, and then it just sits there, crap in its pants. Oh, I'm passing in an element. I told you I was being dumb. And I think I need to pass in a selector. I think that's what's going on. I may have figured it out. I may have overcome my stupidity. I did. I overcame my stupidity. You can do anything, kids. You really can. Now the whole thing where that's like a double quote and that's a single quote, just ignore that. But contain text and to have text both work. This plugin does work. I don't know how to write things. I do wish that you could pass in the browser element here. So that would be kind of a nice to have in this plugin. So that would be good. And then some more assertions would be really good to add. So it looks like they're keeping it fairly up to date though. There's one pull request out there, but I was hoping 2 hours ago, so that's not too bad. That was merged a day ago. That's a Greenkeeper thing. Greenkeeper's super awesome. Hey, that was merged as well. So it looks like this is actually fairly recent. Hey, whoa, look at me. I added a link and it was neat. Yeah, look at that. Typos. I'm really good at fixing typos. So good at it. Anyway, so it looks like this is pretty active and you can kind of get to it. So I'm going to, I don't know, throw this in the chat in case you want to see it, and then call it a day. Thank you all for listening, and say hi. I'll have this on YouTube in the next couple days at some point, and let me know how the audio levels were, because I have no idea how they are. They're a little bit loud on my side for the sound, but I like the music, so I'm good with that. And yeah, if you have any ideas for future things, send them my way as well, and I'll cover them. I think what I'm going to do next time is maybe keep going down this path, try this out a little bit more, maybe look at submitting a pull request to their repo to get things going. So like pulling it down and testing it, because there's a lot of things that we can add to this and make it super awesome and an essential thing to have with your WebDriver IO stuff. So anyway, thanks for listening. And if you want to learn more, I'll just do a quick, that is a thing. This uses WebDriver CSS to do your visual regression testing. And I've covered that in a previous one, and I've covered visual regression service as well. But this is a free 6-day course, and neat little thing that's there. But what I really wanted to mention and shamelessly plug is my course. If you want to learn WebDriver IO, I mentioned that video. The storing credentials and environmental variables is there. That's learn.webdriver.io is out there as well. So, and then I also posted recently on blog.kevinlatham.com. I don't think I mentioned this. A very in-depth tutorial. This is like 2,000 words on how to test your login. It only goes through one test, so you could probably skip through the first half of this because it's mostly about how to get WebDriver IO set up and everything. But it goes through basically writing a test. So if you're pretty new to WebDriver IO, this would be a good little starting point to try things out. And I think everybody pretty much has a login page. Even if you don't have a login page, you probably do. That's like one of the first things that you have as a website is a login page. So it goes through that and talks about assertions and what you can use for those and things like that. So yeah, that's out there as well. I'll post it in chat and you'll see it flash up on the screen. I think, let's see, did it post on there? It should have. Oh no, there. I forgot to move my little browser source chat thing up. So anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate y'all sticking around, and have a great Wednesday, y'all. Press the wrong button.